Hi, folks. You are watching and listening to a very special edition of Open Bar. I'm Mike Morales here in sunny Southern California today. We're not soggy, and that gentleman out there is.
I'm Felipe Soto, and I'm down in South Oceanside, just about an hour and a half south of Mike.
Oh yeah, I know. We gotta catch up. We gotta. The last time I saw Philip, he. In case you don't know who this gentleman is, he is and this is the biggest bottle I've got right now. He is the distiller and part owner of the Bad Stuff Tequila. You may have seen it on social media. Maybe you subscribe to it, to their newsletter. I would recommend you highly do that. This guy is no joke. From what I remember, and Philip and I have known each other, and I call him the other Don Felipe because basically, the other one he kind of made a bigger splash than you did just prior, but no less. Felipe Sotomares is a certified catador, which means he studied to be a catador or similar to a sommelier for wine, but with the Mexican Tequila Academy. And there are two academies, and this was the original one that Philip cut your teeth on that one, on that
exactly.
company, on that organization. And rather than me talk and tell people who may not know who you are, I'm just going to feed you questions, and you could, because this guy is history, not only in a bottle, but history in his personality, because he's got first of all, you not only are you a catador, but now you're a master distiller of the Bad Stuff. First of all, I'm going to start at the beginning. Tell me your family history. How did you get involved in tequila? I mean, this goes back a few decades, correct?
It goes back quite a bit, and it actually goes back to, I think I was 16 years old when I first had my first taste, and we can thank my tío Roberto, my uncle, for bringing up
It's always the tío, It's always the uncle.
He brought up a bottle of tequila that he made at the hacienda that my grandfather had purchased, and after he had got back from the U.S. to Mexico. And actually, it was in Atequila, Jalisco.
Oh, okay.
He brought up this jug of tequila, and my aunt was with him, and he goes to my dad, "We're going to teach Felipe how to drink tequila properly." And 16, I just went, yes. So my dad set up a table in the garage, and my mom and my aunt started making food. And so we sat down in the garage, and my uncle poured me a shot. I grabbed it, shot it. Next thing I know, I'm getting this smack upside the head.
Wow.
My uncle going, "I told you, I'm going to teach you how to drink this properly." And so the next pour, I was very quiet, and I was patient and waited until he explained it. And that was just a seed that he planted, because I did not hear anything about tequila until 1994 from him. And
now, when I met you, I remember that you were helping Dory Bryant, who at that time was the promoter and organizer of the Spirits of Mexico show in San Diego. And the funny thing was, I guess she and I had been in communication, because I tell people that Tequila Aficionado Media, started with the internet, really, literally. We were, this is our 23rd year in doing this, doing shows and doing tastings online. We invented it, as far as I'm concerned. The pandemic didn't do anything to hurt us, because we were just, we just rolled on as usual. But I had my own show in New Mexico prior to Dory doing it. And so we had communicated either on email or in those days, we didn't have forums or Facebook. You know, we had those email lists. Remember the Yahoo had an email list, and everybody would sign up. And I got to meet some of the greats, you know, with the Yahoo Tequila email list, all the current collectors and guys like Robert Denton. You know, I think Ron Cooper was a member, and it was like, wow, that's just amazing. And you're talking with history. Only when you're that young, you don't know that it's history. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah. So when I met you, you were in the middle of, you had the name of your tequila had changed names a couple of times. You were kind of experimenting.
Really, tequila that I was hoping to get out, but it had nothing to do with what I have now. It's a completely different.
Yeah, it's a whole different animal. Yeah, and at one point you couldn't even pour. You just had like a bottle to show. You know, you were there showcasing. Germán González had that happen, I think, too. He was tasting Tears of Llorona, but he didn't really have, you know, the final product at the time.
Right.
But
exactly.
but Dory was really nice about letting you and him and other people just promote themselves and get people excited for the next show. You know what I mean? For the next when that version of the final version of that tequila was available. When did you start experimenting with? Well, let me get past your uncle teaching you. How did you get involved with the Mexican Tequila Academy? What brought that on? What were you doing at that point in your life that said, you know, I need more training?
Yeah, what happened basically is they took note of all the promoting that I was doing to promote the industry. And I wasn't doing it for any other reason other than the passion that I have for this industry and the people behind it, men and women, and of course, all the workers as well. So not only did the Academy notice, but so did the CRT. So they asked me to become an endorsed speaker at different events. So, and then the Academy saw that and they invited me to participate in Guadalajara. And that's where I received my first catador certification. But then they went their way. And I am now and have been a member of the new Academy with you know, the catadores, the vino y mezcal.
Yes.
So, yeah. And I am a maestro catador. I do have, I'm also a master distiller and also a master blender. So I've really worked hard to be able to do what I do, basically. And that's kind of how that all happened.
Well, I remember one year, I know I attended the show a couple of years. One as the show. When I mean the show, I mean the Spirits of Mexico show when Dory was putting it on. Myself and a friend of mine from New Mexico, because I was living in New Mexico then, we had traveled out to. At the time, there were two shows in the same weekend. One was in Las Vegas, and then the other one was in San Diego within the same weekend. So what we would do is we'd fly into Vegas, go to the Vegas show, and then rent a car and then drive to San Diego, right? And then, you know, drive back after the show and fly out of Vegas back into New Mexico. So the couple of times that I went, one, I was invited to be a judge at Spirits of Mexico, which was what a delight and what a learning experience. And I tell people this when I talk to my students, because I'm not sure if you're aware, but I do have a consumer catador course that we put together after.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you're actually in it. We do mention people that they should follow. And one of them is you, because you, of course, you're the master. And I consider you one of my mentors, as well as some of the other, you know, like Germán and people like David Soto and people that you know in the industry who have been doing this for a long time, you know, and Felipe Camarena and Carlos, you know, those guys, you're right there with them. The thing, in my opinion, because I got to tell you, folks, if you have not had the bad stuff, start with the Blanco, and then work your way through all the expressions, because this one here, the one that the mini you had given us, you were nice enough to sample us at El Cholo in Pasadena. We met you and your business partner um, and you poured it. This hadn't even been rolled out yet. And you poured us that night, and I brought my special glassware, which some people may have seen on, when we do sipping off the cuff. And we shared that glass and that, that bottle. And I got to tell you, there were things that I picked out that in an extra añejo, I'd never picked out before. And you could still taste the agave in it. And the reason I bring up the agave is because when in two of those visits to San Diego, where you were living in that area in the county, and we visited you at your home at the time. And Philip is not only into the tequila, but he's into the plants. This guy had a blue agave growing in this front yard, and he knew he took me to, they were growing in like separate planters, I think, and they were huge. And you were telling me the difference between a Highlands agave, blue agave versus a lowlands, and what to look for. And you studied like every facet of this industry. I mean, you could have just as easily been an agavero, right?
Well, I could have been, yes. And that's why when I started working with Dory at the Spirits of Mexico event, she called me Felipe is all things agave. So that's the, the little title she gave me. So, I love the plant itself because it's so versatile, and I learned that from my uncle, because way back in the 20s, once my grandfather went back to Jalisco, or Mexico, I should say, he planted agave and actually grew agave for Cuervo.
Everybody grew agave for Cuervo.
Yeah.
I mean, exactly. that was the guy to work for, right? So
yeah, right, exactly. So it was just so amazing to be able to have Dory ask me to be that guy for that event. It's such a prestigious event.
Oh yeah,
it was beautiful, and there were some great, aficionados coming down, and also beginners. All kinds of people. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was just so much fun.
Well, the funny thing was when I first met Dory, because like I said, we had been communicating, but we'd never met. Again, there was no Instagram, there was no Facebook at the time, so it was nothing but emails, right? I had no idea who to look for or what she looked like. And my friend and I walked in to where she was having the event, and I said, I kept asking the people at the tables, "Where's Dory Bryant? I got to meet her," because she had no idea I was coming. And I tapped her on the shoulder, and I said, "You're Dory?" She says, "Yeah." I says, "I'm Mike Morales." And she goes, "Oh my God, you're the godfather of tequila shows." So, and that's what, and so the following year is when she invited me to be a judge, actually. Because prior to her, we had our shows in New Mexico for about 5 years before there were any shows, including Dory's. And Dory's was really the one that took off. God bless her, because I was hoping to do the same thing with ours, with our show in New Mexico. But that's where I became aware of the Mexican Tequila Academy. I had no idea. One of our guests at, I think, our first or second show was someone who had been excommunicated by the academy. And he wanted, he drove from, I don't know, Texas or El Paso or someplace like that to come to the show to meet me. And in those days, we were just flying by the seat of our pants. We had no idea what we were doing. I had no idea Ron Cooper was living in Taos, and he was one of the first ones to reach out and support us. And he came down, with his mezcal. He was the only mezcal in our show. I mean, I tell people that I feel like Forrest Gump. I was involved in history without even knowing it. You know what I mean? Exactly. You're shaking hands with JFK. You don't know what's going to happen. And it's the same with me. I really feel fortunate that I got a chance to meet you before, while you were in the midst of trying to accomplish what you set out to do. And I know you've been trying to bring out your tequila for how many years now?
Well, a lot of years, but that original didn't work out. So I created a whole new profile, and that's when the bad stuff came out in 2015, or I should say we set it up in 2015. So it was, it's just extremely difficult. People don't realize the steps that you have to take, what it takes to put juice in one of these bottles.
Oh, I'm so glad you have one of those. Because I don't have a full one. I had stashed mine. Oh my God, look at that.
I don't think you have this one.
No, that's a 5-year. Which one is this one?
5-year single barrel select, and you have a 3-year.
This is the Reserva Especial is what it is, and it is best in class winner. I mean, even these minis are all I can say is I don't want to break it open. You know what I mean? Because I'm not. You were so nice when we went to visit you that I was surprised at the amount of tequila you had in your library. Oh. You had stuff that collectors would fall all over themselves, and he says, just pick one. They're here to drink. They're not here to collect. And I think I forget which one it was that I picked, and it was like, oh my God, this is so good stuff. And it's just to me, having met you then, and then we've been in communication ever since. This is almost 15. I don't know how long.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Probably longer than that, I think.
Longer than that, yeah. It has to be, yeah.
I tell people, you don't understand that you feel that what you're drinking now is never going to change. We'll always have this great tasting tequila. And the faster innovations happen with stuff like the internet and things like that, I see the industry advancing much faster than we can keep up, than the plant can keep up. And when I met you and I looked at all your skill sets, and I thought, this guy's a Renaissance man. He's a surfer, he's a horseback rider. Do you sing? Do you ever do karaoke?
After a couple of bottles of the bad stuff,
there you go. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, don't we all?
I also competitively and have been for many years.
Yeah, well, and that's it's. But you've really immersed yourself in the I don't want to call it the business, the industry, but in the art, the craft of all facets. Now, when you make your Blanco, first of all, how did you pick the distillery? I know a little bit about that distillery from other master distillers, but you tell me why you picked it.
Well, it wasn't really me who picked it. It was the distillery who picked me. And it was, just through a gentleman who I had met in Ensenada, and he had some amazing tequilas that nobody had, out of production. So I cut a deal with him and said, look, why don't we start a business and move some of these, rare tequilas that you have, because he had multiples of them. Wow. And it turned out he was the uncle of Don Nico Martinez over at Compañía Tequilera de Arandas in Arandas, Jalisco. And then he introduced me, and they said, well, come on down, let's talk. And that's where I made my first tequila that went to market. It wasn't mine, I consulted, and that was 2003. So I've been involved with this distillery since that time, and know the system, know how they operate. Love the fact that we grow our own agave. We don't use any municipal water sources. There are artesian wells on the site. We go down 250 meters for all our water. And I just really liked what Don Nico and Gilberto were doing. And so I became a part of it, and have been ever since.
When you studied, was there phases that you studied? Like I know, I guess when you were younger, you got a chance to walk among agave, right? I mean, that seems to be where where young folks start off, they get to know the plant, and I've seen you himar, I mean, you know how to wield a koa.
Oh, I do.
Scary.
I still have my original koa from the time my uncle called me in '94 to learn how to make tequila. And I had to go out and harvest my own agave to make my first batches with him,
Wow.
Oh, yeah. I still have it. And I've used it consistently through the years. In fact, it has a little worn spot where my hand worked it. So yeah, it's my koa, definitely.
Do you know that you can buy those things on Amazon and have them delivered now?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, one of my tasters in San Diego, Rick, he goes, look what I got for Christmas. He sends me a picture, and it's him holding a koa. I go, you're kidding? You can buy this on Amazon now? So he got one, but you need a sharpener because it's kind of it looks really thick. Those blades are sharpened to a razor thin,
Yeah.
And so, but just to have one so you can, lean it up against your barrels or up against your cabinet, or scare someone off with it. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. Or take someone to the emergency ward because they cut their finger on it because they didn't listen. It's super sharp, because I've taken my koa and my big broad axe, to, the shows and all to show people this is what we use and this is what we wield to harvest and also to, cut the piña.
Now, so now you picked out your agave. Your uncle, did he have his own distillery? Was he making tequila for other companies? I mean, right?
Yeah. Well, we'll backtrack just a little bit and go to Prohibition. So,
yes. That's right, because your history goes back to Prohibition.
Yes, it does. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, what happened is, the Cristero Revolution happened. My grandfather worked for the Mexican government at the time, and they attempted to assassinate many of the employees. And he escaped with two friends out the back door, got in his car, loaded the family, clothes, whatever they could get in there, and jammed up to the United States. He ended up in a little town south of Long Beach called Wilmington, got a little house, and now he's trying to figure out, shoot, I can't find work. So then he had this bright idea. He dug a basement out and he started harvesting.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he started harvesting the local blue agave americana. And, the broadleaf one, and made a tequila hooch that he started selling to the honky tonks. And it actually, did really well. I mean, he was all over LA, Orange County. Then he met a family in Orange County that had come up from Oceanside, and they were bootleg runners. So they cut a deal, and they started running his tequila all the way to the border.
I love it. That's so cool.
Yeah, so it was really cool to get that story from my great aunt and my mom because they never mentioned it, and maybe it was because it was illegal, but they finally told me, and I was just fascinated by that, and so that's how it started. He finished up because he had a little visit from, let's say, the Irish bootleggers in LA.
Irish bootleggers, also known as the Irish mob. Exactly. Well, LA at that time was run by Irish cops and a heavy Irish influence.
Exactly. So he said, okay, no problem. I goes, I'll stay out of your territory. And he figured, well, Cristero Revolution's over. Mexico's calmed down. I'm going to go back to Jalisco. So he bought a small hacienda in Atequisa and built it out. And of course, he built a still, and he
built his own still.
Yeah, he continued to make, tequila from the good blue agave.
Right.
And then he taught my uncle. My uncle took over after he died. And it was just basically bootleg. It was friends and family is what it was. And that's how I learned. I learned from my uncle, and I learned how to plant hijuelos, how to harvest hijuelos, what they need, how much air circulation they need.
Right. You and I talked about that extensively over email. There was a situation where in some of the areas, it was susceptible to frost and cold air. And you mentioned something really interesting that I don't think anybody's ever talked about, that there's a way to plant your plants so that there's a crosshatch pattern. Exactly. where I guess it's the frost or the air doesn't linger in one spot or blows through or something like that. I don't know how you figure that out. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's, you have to study the air currents because I did design a distillery, help design a distillery in, I think it was Jesus Maria. And it's the same thing with that distillery. It was all about the air currents. Why? Open vat fermentation. All right. So how about what natural accelerator is coming from this wind direction and the other direction? So you would get all these great natural accelerators, pollens and everything go in and accelerate the fermentation naturally.
Right.
And so with the agave, it was the same thing. It was a pattern to allow currents of air to move slowly through, the base of the agave, right, and not so much the upper
not so
side.
much the top, but at the bottom. Okay, that's what I was. It's been a while since I've looked at those notes, but I found that fascinating because you don't see that even when you go there and you travel. Of course, now I was just there last November, and it's kind of sad. And I want to discuss that with you a little bit later. But you see the rows, just straight ahead rows, but I think you sent me a picture. You may have sent me a picture, and it's crosshatch. It's like a herringbone, pattern. If you were to wear a jacket, it looked like a herringbone. And I thought, that's brilliant, because you and I were discussing my Vanassus project that I had been writing about, and how, how, like you said, air currents make a big difference. And I had no idea until I watched a video of Ron Cooper. You may have seen that. It's a famous video, and I actually make the link in our Catador course book. But he's sitting there, and he's probably like 2 or 3 mezcals in, right? But he's waxing poetic, and he says, that every 1,000 meters there are microbes that affect what goes into the natural fermentation of a mezcal. He says there's something different every 1,000 meters. And it's like, that's amazing. And nobody, when you're, like you said, fermenting naturally, mm-hmm, you got to be aware of what's around you, because if you're downwind from somebody who's tossing vinasas, you're in trouble, because that current's going to carry all that junk.
And it also imparts a different flavor profile. It's when you look at that, and let's say this particular distillery in Jesus Maria, to the southwest was huge groves of stone fruit.
Oh.
And the opposite direction were these hills with wild damiana growing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
So you'd get this mixture of air flowing.
Get this aromatic cocktail already.
Exactly.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant, because, I know that when I've talked to I've interviewed a couple of gentlemen with mezcals, and they say they look for areas with their own microclimate. And right, yet when, the microclimate's a little bit different, because you're looking at little pockets of area where everything's favorable. In your case, you're looking for what is favorable and it's like you're creating your own. You're using 2 different microclimates to create your own flavor profile before it even gets in the barrel.
That's right. No, and that comes from the alchemist part of me, which I learned through my great grandmother, who was a curandera in San Luis Rio, Colorado. She was full-blooded Yaqui Indian.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I spent 2 weeks out of every summer from the time I was just a little tyke till I was 17. And I learned so much from her. And I've used that knowledge in what I do with tequila as well.
I remember reading, it's on Instagram, as a matter of fact, Don Adolfo Murillo, who owns Alquimia. You and he have met over the years. Wonderful man, really great tequilas. And his daughter, Eliana, used to work for Google. And Eliana is kind of an entrepreneur, and she works with him as well. And she posted the other day something about how Don Adolfo's, I guess, grandmother taught him how to use the phases of the moon in order to harvest agave.
Right.
Something to that effect. I'll have to read that post because it was just recent. And she picked that up. You know, she heard that story and said, that's great that her father taught her that you're only the second person who's told me that you're using the natural elements to help enhance your final product. Whereas, you know, these mechanized, industrialized tequilas that are coming out it's just all, there's no soul in it. There's no.
And, you know, people do ask me, so what's in your bottle? And I said, my spirit. Is that's truly what
I totally agree. I think, no, you know, I have this crazy idea, and I picked up a lot of techniques and tastings, you know, things from maestro tequileros, maestros, chemical engineers, you know, famed chemical engineers. Of course, there's Carlos, Ingeniero Solis, and his partner. His first name escapes me right now because I'm a little bit excited here. But, you know, when you talk to these chemical engineers, it's like talking to Gandhi. And I get the same feeling with you. You know, there's an element. I know that these guys are scientists. I get it because they have their degree and they went to school or whatever, you know, but then they take that knowledge and they create a niche for themselves. Ingeniero Solis and his partner, Gabriel Espíndola, they invented what I call the Mozart method, where they play Mozart, of course, the stainless steel tanks while it's open air fermenting, you know, and that's based on Dr. Emoto in Japan about, you know, how you can influence water and create the ice crystals. And so all that stuff to me, that, you know, as a copywriter, people will say, or I'll write, it's the hand of the maker that makes a difference. But you know what goes in the hand of, it's not just his hands, it's his soul and his spirit. There's a missing ingredient that you can't put on the label. It's intangible, but it is felt. It is something that if you teach someone to taste tequila properly, they will sense it.
Right, exactly.
And that's what I want to concentrate on, because everybody is going to shoot it like you did when you were young, you know, or whatever, with a novice. And then somebody who's a collector goes, you know, they go visit Felipe or Carlos or you or, you know, Herman. But you have to get to know these people because there's a calmness, there's what do the French call a je ne sais quoi, you know, and I know what it is because I felt it. I've been there. I spent a whole afternoon with Ingeniero Solis, and he's a scientist, but he's doing like muscle testing on me. He made me hold my cell phone. He goes, watch, this is negative. And he's doing this. He goes, now take the phone out. Now do it. And he's a scientist doing kinesiology on me, right? And people think that's woo-woo. But these guys are old. They were older than me, and they're teaching these fine techniques. You know, I can only imagine what you learned from your curandera grandmother. I mean, there's got to be stuff you can't even talk about. You're like,
there are some things that I can't talk about, but can talk to you when I see you in person and tell you all about it.
I need a limpia. Can you do that?
It was one trip that I did with her, we went into the desert to collect herbs because she was getting low on her stock. So we camped out in the desert, and it was amazing, not just going with her, but she was already in her 90s at that time. And she was still trekking out, getting herbs so that she could, take care of the townspeople where she lived. There's a part of it that I'll let you know when we meet, okay, that really was one of the most profound experiences I've had in my life.
You did peyote, didn't you?
Yeah.
Hey, it's not anything I haven't heard before, because that one gentleman that I interviewed for Brujo Mezcal, he's such a passionate guy, and he told me the same stories. He goes, I went out there with shamans, and it was the most spiritual experience he's ever had. And it really, it paints your life. You're completely, and I've only been able to experience this by delving into myself, and learning these techniques, but also talking to guys like you. And Leopoldo Solis is the ingeniero that I was talking about that invented that method. And NOM 1414, the Feliciano Vivanco y Asociados, right, that's what they're known for, among other ones. I think Don Pilar is also a user of that method. Mm-hmm. But, and then I hear that story. I read that story about Don Adolfo, who uses the phases of the moon. And it's brilliant, and he's got an organic tequila, certified organic. And he and I discussed over the years, the ins and outs of what it takes to become an organic agave grower. I mean, he was the one that taught Casanoble how to do it before he had his own certification. So
right, exactly. Yeah, it was funny. I'll tell you a little story about Adolfo and myself.
I want to hear it.
We were invited to do a tasting at a great restaurant up in Ojai and speak about, tequila.
Ojai?
Okay,
I was trying to move in there.
And it was great. So luckily I got to speak first. And we each had a mic, and Adolfo's next to me smiling like he always does with his big
mustache.
Yeah. And I go, so I'm not a chemist. I took 1 year of chemistry. I'm an alchemist. And all of a sudden he goes, wait a minute, I'm the alchemist.
Yeah.
No, I am. It was great.
Well, his Alchemia, the inspiration for Alchemia was The Alchemist, written by Paulo Coelho. I hope I'm pronouncing that. I don't speak Portuguese, but I have the book, and I'd never read it until I read that about why he called it Alchemia.
Alchemia. Mm-hmm.
When you talk about history, about how they say that the Moors brought distillation to the Spaniards, because every culture that conquers another culture brings their influence into that culture. And the Spanish supposedly brought distillation to the Americas. But when the Moors did it, it was considered alchemy. It was considered magic.
Right.
When we talk about when I talk about a little bit about the history of like California, for instance, and that, a lot of areas are known for their wine grapes, like Santa Ynez, Santa Barbara, all those areas here. The ones making the brandy and the hooch, that was the monks. It was not the Spaniards. They were in the middle of conquering. They were creating the race. They had no, they brought the brothers along because they were going to make the hooch out of whatever was being made as hooch.
That's right. Yeah. And also, the monks were very instrumental. The Carthusians monks were very instrumental in saving the Andalusian horse breed of Spain.
Well, I know you're a big horseman too, because we were discussing off camera that Felipe, if you're not sure, if you see him moving around a little bit, and let me know if you're feeling uncomfortable. I can pause this and you can go do PT or whatever. But you've just had some major back surgery, so I wanted to make sure that you could sit for at least an hour with us. But you are part of I mentioned his back injury because I guess you had a horse injury at one point besides surfing.
Yeah.
Anybody tell you don't do your own stunts?
Hey, I can't find anyone to play my role.
Y'all volunteer. I was young enough. I could have, I know how to ride a horse. I think was not aware that they actually saved that strain of a horse.
Yeah.
Because you rode them, but did you breed them as well?
I brought. Oh, did I? What? I'm sorry.
Did you breed horses also?
I had my friends from the Spanish Horse Association bring in the horses, right? So, and these were the two top riders of Andalusian horses. In fact, they would dress up. You saw them; they were in their full-on Spanish outfits, or yes, yeah.
Well, you see those horseback riders too, like every year at the Rose Parade. I mean, it is a big. California has a long history of horseback riding and show horse riding. So there are lots of from the sheriff's posse to the Spanish and everyone had those groups that ride in the parade. They all have their own separate animal, their own separate breed that they represent and show and it's fascinating. I wasn't much of a horse person. I did own horses at one point in my life. I learned to ride bareback. I actually, that was hard. I actually had at one point, somebody sold us a Paso Fino because I loved paddle horses. We had a Tennessee Walker on the property, and then someone sold us a Paso Fino, but the Paso Fino was used for barrel racing. So it looked like a Morgan. It was short and stout, but if you would just gallop it a little bit, it would have the paddle, it would paddle out.
Yeah.
But I didn't have a saddle large enough for that back. So I had to learn to ride it bareback. And that's rough when you're a guy. So, but anyway, that I digress. That I have no experience like you did, with how did you get involved with those guys? Are just friends of yours or what?
Well, I've always loved horses and I've always wanted horses. So once I was able to afford a horse, I got horses. And of course my picks were the Andalusian. I rescued a beautiful Arab years ago, which was just probably the best trail horse I ever had. I mean, he was like a mountain goat. So,
wow.
I really got into it. And then I got invited to the Fiesta of the Spanish Horse up in Burbank. And every breed of Spanish horse was there, including La Manga Larga from South America. All these breeds were there. And they put on an amazing show, and that's how I got involved with them. And of course, they would say, well, can you get tequila for this event? And I said, yeah, let me see who I can get to come in and do a tasting. And so that's, everything always led to tequila. The road was always paved with agave,
You know why I hate this man, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching? I hate this guy because he was invited to the Playboy Mansion and he's sending me pictures. He's texting me these pictures of him and the bunnies. It's like, okay, officially, I hate you now. It's like, and I guess you were also involved in you went to Japan. You traveled there, didn't you? Or China. Was it China or Japan?
I didn't travel to Japan. I was invited to be a guest judge with the sake organization, and so they had 4 or 5, sake masters from Japan, and then of course you had those that make them here in the States. And it was funny because I hung out with them, with the masters from Japan, because I was curious, and they had this great interpreter, and she loved tequila as well. And then she found out that I was a master distiller and made tequila, and I had the bad stuff. And she goes, "Oh gosh, it's too bad we didn't know. We would have loved to have given them a sample." I go, "I'll be right back." I had a few bottles in my car, and so I brought out the 3-year, poured them all. Man. A nice little sip, and they just, aroma, everything,
They know how to nose it. They know how to taste it.
Exactly. And then after they tasted, it was the most amazing. I wish I had a video of it. The most amazing thing was, oh.
Well, you know, from one master distiller to another master, you know, from one sensei to another, that makes total sense to me. You know, that they would so appreciate. You know, when I remember doing an event here and going to an event in LA right after my father passed away. It was like the first event that I actually went to, and it was the day that Tapatio was rolled out in Southern California, and at that time it still is being imported by Charbet. Mm-hmm. And to hear the story, you know, of Marco Carrasco-Savage, when he talks about how his father, who was the retired master distiller of Charbet Distillers, talking to Carlos about distillation and how they went back and forth and said, no, that's not how it works. It's like, it's the reverse. And it was so funny because there are two masters who really appreciate each other's method of crafting a spirit. So exactly. It makes total sense. And that language, that thing bridges languages, right? It's just
it's a universal language. It really is, you know. And they did invite me to go. I have not had a chance to get there yet, but I do, you know, want to get there. I mean, I really want to see their facilities, because they're small craft facilities. They're not large, you know, big commercial facilities. So I definitely want to do that. It'll happen. Just when it happens. That's it.
Jeez. I wanted to discuss with you about barrel aging, because I know that you know, frequently when on our sipping off the cuffs, we get and they're, you know, we get what I normally expect over the years as a natural progression from Blanco, Reposado to Añejo, and it's an expected progression. But now people are doing something different with Reposados, and it's almost like they come up with 3 different flavor profiles for 3 different markets. And I get that. You don't really know until you actually go from one to the other. And there are things now being done. Of course, we're in an Añejo shortage, except for a few who are smart enough to rest barrels and not touch it for 12 years.
Right.
Yeah, 12. We'll get to that in a second. But I see that there's more, especially those who are not using the additives. They're using more double barreling and triple barreling and experimenting with wine barrels and bourbon and French oak, and then used French oak and used bourbon. You know, there's all. I always thought that each, depending on the brand, that some would deal only with the Blanco and the agave, and then there's somebody else would deal with producing a reposado, and then the guy who's managing the barrels is somebody else. Is it like that frequently, or is it because there's so, you know, each one,
you know, you have different ways. We'll go with the reposado. So you can either do the large batch pipones,
right,
or you can do the 200-liter barrels, which is what I work with, but it's always new French oak with a medium toast. You know, why? For me, that's one of the keys to producing a beautiful añejo, extra añejo, and on down the line. And you know, you have certain techniques that you use to make sure that barrel is going to be consistent all the way through. As you know, I know nobody rotates their barrels, you know, so it's just, for me, wood is everything. And I was a woodworker for many years. I learned about wood, you know, and I learned about the different types of wood, their grains, from an old German carpenter. This guy was amazing. He taught me how to make furniture, and I would make my own furniture, you know, with different exotic woods. There'd be an old pepper tree that was being cut down. So I'd say, hey, can you mill it? And they said, yeah, sure, we'll cut it down for you. So they cut down, I take these planks, and then I start working with that wood. So I learned a lot about different woods, what they can impart And I have a lot of ideas in my head, and a lot of people say, well, why don't you teach someone this? Well, you really can't, because it's a mindset and how you work and how you were brought up that brings out that talent.
Well, it sounds to me like you've apprenticed all your life.
I have, yeah, all my life.
Yeah, because each one of these skills has, like you said, has always led you back to tequila. Mm-hmm. You've always been able to bring back that. Can you cooper your own barrels? Do you know how to do it?
Yeah, they cooper them. They're in Mexico. Yeah, in Jalisco. Yeah, absolutely.
But have you done your own barrels? Have you been able to?
Yeah, my own barrels. Yeah, I have my own barrels. They're always new French oak. They're seasoned properly. The cooper is great. You know, it took a while to find somebody who really knew what he was doing, but this guy is phenomenal. And I just, you know, I wanted most barrels, you know, they fire them, some throw chips in, but it's more for the aesthetics, you know. So you get these striations through it. I wanted a different pattern, so I created, you know, a different way to get the pattern that I want, to get more exposure to the wood and be able to breathe the way I want it. And it's interesting. But again, that's from my woodworking knowledge and what you can do.
Wow, that's just it's like I could go on this forever, but I know I don't want to keep you sitting there for too long, because I know I had in my head, I was thinking, what am I going to ask this guy? Because I've known him for so long, but there's so many, you know, I finally get a chance to grill you, because every time you and I meet, it's always, you know, social, or you're doing something, or, you know, I'm doing something, or finally when we had dinner. And I remember the reason I bring up this little bottle is really special, because we tasted this after dinner. El Cholo, if you've never been to El Cholo in Pasadena this year, when you see this video, they are celebrating 100 years of serving families in the LA area. So each one of us had a separate dinner plates, and I think you ordered the shrimp and the lobster or something, some terrific thing. And then we had this after dinner. And we had long conversations discussing what was going on with you and the bad stuff. And I met your partner and your business partner. And I remember when you mentioned the 12, the 12-year, mm-hmm. And I said to you that at one point in those conversations we had way back when, I think it was Robert Denton that actually brought it up and said, if you age tequila longer than 5 years, it tastes like something totally different. It won't even taste like tequila. And in those days, obviously, you know, he was right, you know, yep. But right. Now with the newer innovations and with guys like you, and I'm sure that there are other people who are just managing barrels like crazy and doing just, you know, I mentioned Ana Maria Romero Mena, who is doing stuff with barrel blending, you know, using multiple barrels to get, or barrels with different staves,
right? Exactly.
Different woods, and she's doing some crazy stuff with and producing these beautiful profiles, you know. And it's like, what kind of mind does that take? It's like, you know. So when it comes to barrel management now, what was different from back then when Robert told us this, you know, and to what you're doing now? Because you have a 12-year-old, and if you folks have not seen that review, Alex and I did the review. Alex has that bottle, by the way. I don't.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
I don't trust myself with that bottle, because I'll drain it. It'll be gone. But you have that beautiful presentation of that 12-year-old.
I'm going to, so that people know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. As long as you got it handy, oh yeah, look at that. That is so beautiful.
You know, you saw the gift box.
Yes. I told Alex to put it in the vault. You know.
Yeah, the bottle I just showed you, by the way, was bottle number 2.
Wow.
And bottle number 1 is in my cabinet, and the prototype filled with the 12 is in my cabinet.
Of course it is. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So what, and when we tasted it, of course it was off the cuff. We did not get a chance to really dissect it, for an hour like we did with, after dinner with this one. But there were essences that were opening up and blooming the longer it sat in my, and I only had that one pour. I didn't pour it more than once. And it was just, the longer it sat there and bloomed, the more phases, the more complexity, the more complex it got. And then I've never been able to sense anise in an extra añejo. Usually I get that in a blanco. And I look for that, but it was there, and it was like, oh my God. Every time I took a sip, it was something different. It was like somebody else poured it. Are we talking about the same booze? So what's different now from what happened, from what was going on back then?
Well, back then, most of the extra añejos, and most of the tequilas, period, that were being aged were being poured into old whiskey barrels. Okay, cognac barrels, whiskey barrels, bourbon barrels. Well, those barrels have seen their days. So you have to be very careful how long you leave your tequila in there, or it will be overpowered by the wood. It'll be musky. It won't taste like tequila. It's going to taste like something you don't want to have, or something that you'll take out occasionally, and that's it. So my thought was using brand new French oak barrels with a medium toast, and then my work in the cellar. I can't disclose it because that's my deal.
Yeah, it's your recipe. I don't want to know. As long as you say you're doing, when you said nobody rotates their barrels, the only rotation of barrels I've ever heard is the Solera method of Jerez. And so I'm not sure if there's any influence, any Spanish influence that you are imparting into your extra añejos and your aged versions.
My roots go back to Catalonia and also Galicia. So yes, there is, and they're all up here.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay, that's good.
But,
oh my God,
you have to be innovative to try and get a spot in this industry. If you're not innovative or creative and bringing something new, very special to the market, you're going to have a tough time.
Well, I was going to ask you, what do you? I know often you either consult with brand owners, probably not anymore, but I know that.
Upon a time, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to be able to do that. But usually, when they come to me, it's already after the fact. They're in way too deep, and in my experience, from what I've seen in the industry and the brands I've seen more of them fall apart and go away. Than actually survive and thrive. So when somebody asks you for advice about starting a tequila brand, because what do you tell them?
Okay, so a very good friend of mine, international banker, he's also Latino. We've been on each other for 20 plus years. He goes, Felipe, every time you open your mouth, you give away your secrets. He goes, stop it. So I finally, when I launched the bad stuff, decided, okay, I'll stop. So I no longer really advise people on what to do. It's just, I'm concentrating on this right now. But everything that I've done in my life, every type of study that I did, for whatever reason, leads right back to tequila. Like I said, wood. So I made 3 boxes, one for my 2 business partners and one for myself. So,
oh my God, look at that. Oh, geez.
And at the top, it says who it is, but the beauty, it's lined with agave wood.
And I've seen. I remember when I first met you at your home, you had a surfboard that you had made out of a quiote, which
Right.
nobody had ever done before. At that point, nobody had, you know, I didn't know that that was a wood that was strong enough to be molded and used as furniture or whatever. I mean, it makes sense to me, you know, but you had I guess
Well,
that had a terrible demise. I understood it was somebody had stolen it or something like that.
yeah, you look at the agave itself, the quiote, and you cut it, and there's these tiny threads that look like glass in it. So the tensile strength is amazing. And the beauty of the quiote in making a surfboard or using it for furniture, which I've been dabbling with, each piece is a work of art because each quiote has different colors in it. And you use those, and it's just fantastic. And yes, the surfboards, they're beautiful. They're works of art. You know,
Yeah.
they're one of a kind. Each one's different just because of the quiote being different.
Wow. Is there nothing you don't do? Can you cook?
Oh, I love to cook. Yeah.
You're killing me.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, you know, I figured that there was, you know, I'm sure that there are people maybe after this that will who see this interview will come up to you and go, you know, I'd like to pick your brain and give me some advice and things like that. But you know, you did mention previously that innovation is really the bottom line for now where the industry is at this point.
Mm-hmm.
That if you don't bring something new to the market, you're just, you know, you're going to be lumped in with the mainstream, and we know what's going on with the mainstream and all that. When somebody comes up to you and they say something weird like, does the bad stuff have any additives in it? Because you'll get that, you know, it's almost like, does it have any cooties? You know what I mean? It's like, you know, it's become such a buzz phrase. And what people don't understand is it's part of the normas. It's right. Never going to go away.
But we are definitely additive free. We are not certified organic, but we have the highest kosher rating that you can get, which is just as good.
Yeah, it's just as good, and that's what I've been told. And I have a small book that I put out about that, having interviewed, you know, rabbis and brand owners who one brand owner who no longer owns the brand said to me that getting the organic certification was like the next step after getting the kosher certification. It just made sense to him to get one and then the other, you know, organic and then they get kosher, and you know, he just felt better about it. And so yeah, it does. I think it makes a big difference. Although till I found out that you could have a diffuser made tequila certified organic or certified kosher.
Oh, really?
Certified kosher. Yeah, kosher, not organic, apparently. Yeah. But what do you see now? I mean, you grew up in this industry. I mean, much longer than me. I grew up watching it, you know, for 23 years, but you are actually in it, you know, in one form or another over the years, and now consistently now for what, 12, 15, 20 years or something like that?
Yeah, at least. Yeah. First batch in 94.
Yeah, well, longer than that. Okay. So what do you see something that's lamentable about the industry now? You know, what you've seen the industry from so many different facets. What do you see as its future? You can be honest here. It's just you and me and, you know, 2 million people.
I am hoping that the norma changes when it comes to agave itself, because, you know, we have the blue agave, but there are varieties of that blue agave which give you the same profile.
Right.
It looks exactly the same. The only difference is, you know, the gene chain in it. But I'm hoping that they would begin to allow the use of those agaves that are in the blue agave tequilana category, so that we can overcome, the issues that we're having right now with agave. A lot of people didn't learn from the 95 to 2000 issue.
Yeah.
And we really have to be vigilant of what we're doing, because it will affect people's quality, their ability to produce. It already has. I mean, a lot of brands can't even produce their XAs right now because they don't have the mature agave. They don't have any extrañejo, period. I will tell you about something that I came up with, but once we're off camera. And
Sure. Okay.
Which is really innovative, And speaking of innovations, I'm going to blow our horn in that the Plata and the Reposado both received innovation awards for the complexity. Yep.
I get it. I've done all the tastings with Alex of all your bad stuff because, I like to keep the consistency there whenever a new expression comes across. Mm-hmm. And it's been, what a ride it's been. And he and I have discussed it even on camera. There's stuff that we say that we don't film, we don't, and it's like, we just go on and on and on about how great your tequila is. I think we brought up how you got the name. I think it was just the business partner said, this is the good stuff. No, it's the bad stuff, and that's
right.
He gets the naming rights. So what the hell? One other thing I wanted to ask you about your life. When did you learn to sail a boat? I thought you were living on a boat for a while.
That goes back to, I was probably about 17, 18 years old. Started sailing Hobie Cats, and then I got really into it. I went to San Felipe and got invited to participate in a race with the Nacras, which are high performance cats. And it just really, I loved it. And it just started from there. And I haven't stopped since then. I've been on hiatus from sailing just because of my back surgery, and also surfing. But I tell you, there's nothing like it, nothing like it. And, I do have, and all of my sailor friends say that I'm going against the rules when I do this. I go, but I do have a bottle of the bad stuff on my sailboat, not rum. Tequila.
Good for you. Well, what do they expect? It's like, geez. Is there, geez, this guy does everything. I told you he's like a Renaissance man, folks. I'm telling you, we could go on and on, but I guess at this point, we've already discussed about giving people advice. And so that's always, there's two questions that I always ask when I do these open bars. One is why tequila? And obviously it's in your blood. But the other one is, if somebody comes to you and would ask you for advice, what would you say? And now you stop giving advice. But I like the part about innovation and not taking the shortcut, because you can always dump a colorant, an aromatic,
it's my thought on that is basically, why use an additive when you can do it naturally? You really can.
Yeah, you can.
The agave is so versatile in its flavor profile from start to finish that you can get those profiles. And also, depending on where your agave is grown, we're very fortunate in that we're in that golden triangle up there in Arandas. And we have beautiful agave. And there are certain things that I look for in our mature agaves that also make a difference in how the tequila tastes as well.
Well, you can identify that. I know that firsthand, that you're the guy that can tell. How do you tell the difference? Well, look at how the way the leaves are growing, and it's like, huh, what? Because I'm just listening, because I'm not a horticulturalist. I can't even say it, but what are so what future innovations do you have for the bad stuff? I know you had some good news coming up, and is there something you can discuss with us? I subscribe to the newsletter, so I kind of know a little bit that you're. Last I read, you were coming up with a coffee liqueur.
Yeah, if you'll excuse me, I can grab you the sample bottle.
Sure. Yeah, it would help if you would need to stand up too. And why no problem. While you're doing that, I'll just keep talking because dead air. We don't need dead air. Yeah. No, it's just, there's this guy is so surprising. Felipe has every time I talk to him, and we don't get a chance to do this very often, it's always through email or a private message on a social media platform, but he's always surprising me with something. And again, if you folks have not signed up for the Bad Stuff newsletter, please do so. Sign up for ours. Our newsletter is free right now. But there's always something that he's coming up with. And if you're signed up to the newsletter, you'll have like first dibs. You'll know what's coming out. So tell us what you're coming up with.
All right. So the Bad Stuff Licor de Café. Let me see if I can get this correct.
There you go. Oh, wow.
So I don't know if you can read the label.
Yeah, sample only 375. Yep. I want it.
So
well, there's a everybody was using for the longest time, they were using that Patron XO, and I didn't particularly care for it forever, but they took it off the market. And all of a sudden you start to see other tequila companies now bringing on their version of a coffee liqueur. Right. So it makes sense that you would try to fill that gap because there were a lot of people that are going to miss it.
Right. Yeah. And this is, again, it's like nothing you've ever had before.
I don't know. I've had a really good one that I'm hoarding, but you and I haven't got to share that together because I haven't had one that I loved. And this particular brand, I don't know what they did. I can talk to you about it off camera, but they rolled out everything. Mezcal, coffee liqueur. They had a mezcal con matcha. They had, I know. Mezcal with tequila with salts or something, with electrolytes. They did in colored bottles. History gone. They made the splash and they came out with all of that. And the coffee liqueur, that's the one I'm hoarding because I have it. I actually have it in a separate room.
When we get together, I'll definitely bring this.
Yeah, because I want to. Yeah,
compare
because
it's the formula has been submitted to FDA, just waiting for the approval, but it will be this year.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it because in the past you would have café con piquete, which is coffee with a little spike of whatever liqueur was there, and that's generally when you would have. For me, when I would have XO, I'd always put in my coffee because it was so bitter and overdone. It was completely over the top that the only way you could kill it was to put it a little bit in your coffee. But the ones that I really enjoy, and they're very few and far between, like I say, I've only had maybe 2 or 3, where you could sip it out of a glass and you don't need the coffee. Mm-hmm. And I'm suspecting that yours is very similar to that. Where it would be sippable on its own.
Yeah. However, I've done small tastings with this, and what I do is I get a little, say, half gallon of the French vanilla ice cream for a scoop, and drizzle this over the top.
Oh now, man,
it's
the drizzle. Oh my God. Felipe, I could talk to you for like forever, but I know we've overdone this. And I don't want to keep you sitting down for too long, but I so appreciate your time and that we've had a chance to finally catch up and do this. Folks, if you have not had the Bad Stuff, and again, I have a small bottle because I've hoarded, I've hid all my other bottles, but if you see this, pick it up. It's reasonably priced, even considering what's out there and what's been on the market. The Blanco Reposado, all day long, versatile on its own. another mad genius here. I should start calling you the, I don't know, the alchemist, but then, Don Adolfo's going to get mad.
Yeah, Adolfo will probably be
Adolfo's going to, I'm going to get Adolfo on here, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll let you come in and the two of you can discuss alchemy.
I would like to show you one thing and mention one other thing about the doce.
Sure, absolutely. Please do.
The doce, I'm proud to say, I've only entered it in 2 competitions, San Francisco International, and we took a gold there, and the Las Vegas Global International or Global Spirits Competition.
Global Spirits, yes.
It took platinum in the extra añejo category.
Well, of course. Duh. I mean, this is the first tequila that I've had that literally, it blows that old saying back in the beginning, in the old days where, back in the day when they said, don't age it more than 5, maybe 7 years, but it's going to taste like something else. This thing still tastes like tequila. And I know, having known you for so long, that you would never put out something that did not express the agave that it's made with, because I know that you love the plant to begin with. All great master distillers love the plant first.
Absolutely.
That's the one you can name a distiller that you're happy with. Germán González, he loves the plants. You love the plant. Carlos, they were agave growers forever. Right. Felipe, same thing. You want to bring that the essence of the plant. Otherwise, you're just making something else.
Well, my tío told me when I was learning how to plant and all about agave, he goes, Felipe, si no conoces el agave, no conoces el tequila. If you don't know the agave, you don't know tequila.
Is that your slogan?
Yeah. Well, my uncle told me.
I know, but is that can that be like a slogan somewhere?
Yeah, definitely my slogan.
Oh, okay.
It's my uncle's
I love that. That is, and he's absolutely correct.
Right.
I mean, that's the cloth. That's that same cut from the same cloth that all the, you have the pedigree. You just, I think finally it's coming in. It's being known. But like I said, you've been the perennial. What's the word I'm looking for? Geez, I just kind of lost it. You've apprenticed. You're like this perennial apprentice. Do you continue learning? Is that still something that you do in that industry? Do you pick it up from other people, or is it just you and when you're out sailing, you get this idea and you go, I got to try that?
Yeah, I'll tell you. I wake up 1:30, 2 in the morning with an idea, and I've got my little my pad, and I'll type it in, and go back to it in a day or two, and when I'm sailing, I get these ideas, and when I'm out, period, it just comes to me, and it's interesting because it doesn't come as an idea per se; it comes in pictures.
Well, of course.
Like a movie board, it's kind of like a storyboard. Yeah. But I want to show you, we are working on this new project.
Uh-oh.
This
is a scoop.
You're the first to ever see this.
This is a scoop, folks. Here it is, the scoop.
Yeah.
What am I looking at? Okay, the bad stuff. Reserva Especial Extra Añejo 100. Okay, show me what's the difference? Oh, I love the box, by the way. Nice box. Oh my God. Holy cow. And that beautiful presentation, completely different from your other one.
Yeah.
Now, what's different about that? Is that just a new presentation, or is that?
So this is just the presentation, because I felt the 3-year deserved a special bottle and a special presentation. But that bottle is also going to be used for the añejo that's coming out, but it's my special cigar blend.
Oh, you do cigars? Okay.
Actually, I'm going to be, Rocky Patel is very kind in getting me a box of his 2-year limited edition cigars. And that's what I'm pairing it with.
I hate you again. I hate you again. Rocky Patel. For those of you who are cigar smokers, you know who that name is. Amazing cigars. You and I have not. That's the one thing you and I have. We shared a meal, but we haven't in memories. But we've never shared a cigar together. I have an affinity for Nicaraguans because that's where my folks are from, and I've had the great pleasure of it's been several years, but I visited the Plasencia factory in Esteli, which now is finally getting a huge name for itself. You know, the Plasencia. And I bought 2 boxes with me, and nobody ever heard of that, you know, that factory. And now it's huge. And you and I can discuss, you know, cigars and regions of the terroir, you know, of
Right.
tobacco.
Well, what we need to do is get you and Alex down here to my little humble tasting room in my house.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'll pull out some of the Patels. It is a beautiful, I mean, it's almost as if he was thinking of tequila when he created this cigar. It pairs so well with it.
Well, you know, years ago, Drew Estate, which is one of my favorite cigar companies, they had a line that was called a Tres Generaciones line, where it was actually dipped or aged. I don't know how they did the wrapper. In Tres Generaciones tequila. So it was a joint project with the Sauza 3 Generations. And I don't think I ever had a chance to get one of those cigars. They no longer make it for, you know, lots of reasons probably. But I can imagine that this one, I think the innovations of cigar making have followed along with craft spirits in general.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And then, you know, I have been speaking with Payne Cigars as well.
Right.
And because their office is just right down the street from me. And I walked in.
Oh, look at you.
I go,
oh my God.
The boss here? And they go, yeah, he's in the back. I go, can I talk to him? Well, yeah. May I ask who it is? And I go, oh, my name is Felipe. I make tequila. And he goes, hang on a second. And he comes out.
And tequila opens doors.
Yeah, it really does. So I said, look, I'd like to invite you to my small tasting room at my house. I want you to taste my tequila. I have an idea. So he said yes. So basically, we're taking one of our barrels. He's going to put racks in it, and he's going to ferment the wrapper in this sealed barrel, ferment the wrapper for 3 to 4 months, and that'll be the best of cigar.
Ah, okay. I want a box. I don't know what you're going to price it at. I'll even settle for a couple of sticks because this is what a treat. That's just going to be what a great idea, though.
So again, what do you do to be different? You come up with ideas that are innovative, that change the game all the way around.
Well, and also attracts another market.
Exactly.
I mean, you know, you're appealing to the cigar smokers who are so used to the rums and the dark spirits and the bourbons and whiskeys. You know, tequila, I think, in my opinion, when you start to see it, and you'll see it more and more in cigar clubs, cigar bars, cigar lounges, where there's more and more aged tequilas. Mezcals haven't infiltrated that market yet, as far as I know, but I think there's room for a good mezcal to be able to do that as well. But yeah, you're opening up a whole new category for yourself, you know, and your brand. It's makes total sense. My God, Felipe, thank you. This has been a joy. For me, this has been a nice walk down memory lane. You know, your memories and my memories, and then hopefully creating new memories for people who are watching us. Folks, again, the bad stuff. Go find it. Go get it anywhere in Southern California. How many states are you in now?
I think it's 17 to 20, something like that.
Okay, so and I guess Old Town Tequila is available
in each one of those states. Have them. I mean, you know, all our products. We're very excited about that. But again, you know, I want to thank you for the invite. You know, we go back so many years, Alex, you know, as well.
Oh, yeah.
You know, really, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. The fact that I can say, hey guys, guess what? This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm up to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love sharing that, you know, those things that are coming up, and I can't wait to try that coffee liqueur.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I promise that I won't drink what's left of it that I'm hoarding, because I want your opinion, because, you know, again, we're going to be doing a lot of cross pollination, maybe, or, you know, a lot of opinions. All of this stuff happens off camera, but who knows? You know, we might take a few pictures. But again, Felipe Soto Mares of the Bad Stuff Tequila. Get it if you can find it, enjoy it, share it with your family. You know, it really does come, as you have seen, folks who have watched, sat through this whole interview. It's not just the hand of the maker, it's his spirit that's involved in the spirit. And there's a reason they call it spirits. And I completely agree. And I hope that that's another message that we can help amplify and bring it out there, because we have to get people in touch with their spirits.
Right.
Because then I think we can turn where we see things going around, or at least, you like a good horse. You don't want to, you know, let's go to a nice little parade march. Let's not do the gallop. You know, I think for me, that's what I would like to see, because like, as you said earlier in the interview, nobody learned anything from the 2000s and the 19, you know, from the shortages that had happened then. And I remember those shortages, you know, and now this one, I think, has been prolonged and unnecessarily, in my opinion, but we can discuss that later. Right. Anyway, thank you, Senor. Thank you so much for being my teacher and confirming a lot of what I've been thinking in my head about everything. You know, everything that I asked you is just my own. A lot of them were just personal, you know, interests of mine. And having met you and been with you, you know, briefly throughout the years, we got to do this again. You know, maybe after you're done with your physical therapy, you're back out on the boat. You know, you're back out in the public. We'll get together in OC, in Oceanside, and do something special from there. I know Alex would love it.
Yeah, and as we say in Mexico, gracias, saludos, y nos vemos.
Nos vemos. Thank you, folks. You've been watching and listening to a very special edition of Open Bar. I'm Mike Morales of Southern California. That gentleman was Felipe Soto Mares of the Bad Stuff. Go get it. I can't emphasize that enough. And hey, thanks for being with us. Again, Felipe, we will see you soon. Gracias, amigo.
Saludos.